Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to the Raymond Hall Show. We have a full house this evening. We have a house full of distinguished guests. We are so happy to have Iris Jones here in the house. She's going to talk to us about something that's vitally important. And I don't care how you move or how much you got in the bank or don't have in the bank, you're not going to get around this one. She's here to talk to us today about grief and loss. And it's a discussion that all of us need to pay attention to and have a part. In talking with her, she brought some things out that I had never paid attention to on how we miss some things and that are vitally important and how we should communicate, and we don't sometimes. And also we have with me a fellow veteran and my friend and someone who deals with therapy also. To my right side here is Mr. Derek Williams. That's right. And he has a whole host of things that he works with veterans and other people on that has to do with various therapies and that kind of thing. To my far left is my friend, Levada Theus. How are you?
I'm wonderful.
It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
I have to tell you, everybody looking and saying, what's wrong with him? He looks different. Yes, that's because I whacked my mustache. And then I had to just cut it off. Okay.
You look good on you, though. Look good on you.
No, they've been calling me turtle face all day. So I'm just happy to be here. And I want to thank you for joining us. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And we're going to get that SoundCloud back up and running so we can have a presence on the podcast, people who want to listen as well. So, Ms. Jones, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine today.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the show here with us.
My pleasure.
Okay. And you also you're going to talk to us about voting.
Well, I'm just going to re-emphasize that. I have to do that every show because we need to get out and vote.
Yes.
And my focus is we're trying to get 10,000 people registered by June the 5th. Okay. So I have to keep putting that message out there. So I have to keep
That's true.
Vote.
That's true.
Yes.
See, if you vote, your vote counts, and if you don't vote,
yes, it counts.
It counts.
Yeah.
And we can see that by the state of affairs of America today.
That's true.
You must vote.
Look at Alabama.
Oh my goodness, yes. Then we're trying to duplicate Alabama.
Wow. Okay, what happened in Alabama?
The black women took it over the top. We won that election for them. Yes, we did.
Oh, yeah. I thought maybe something happened yesterday.
No. With the voting.
No, the voting.
Okay.
Voting.
Okay. Now, that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of things that this show is all about service, and that's just one of the things that to me should be automatic.
Yes, but it's not.
It's not, but that's by design too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's by design. It's some people. It is more profitable to them that you don't vote.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And one of the things that they have gotten around it is these propositions that you see in front of the grocery stores. Mm-hmm. Are you a registered voter? Yes. Well, will you sign our proposition? And it's funny. You go and vote, but the proposition that they got for you is you signing this proposition that I don't want to vote.
But
so
I think
in 2 years, we're going to take your vote away.
Some of that's on us because back in the day, you were hooked up with your grandparents and elders.
That's true.
And you got the reason why you should vote. And I think the breakdown of the family from the matriarch being separated from has something to do with why these younger people don't vote. Because they don't have the historical value that we grew up with.
Right. They don't see it.
But that breakdown is also by design of the family.
Well, yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah,
that's by design.
That's also by design.
All by design.
That's true. Yes. Well, speaking of design, that's why we're here today. There's a natural process to loss. And then there's a process that's put upon the community. Mm-hmm. And that's by design as well. Mm. Okay. I think if we went to the four corners of our communities and each one of us took a different direction, we would not find a gun manufacturer nowhere in our community. So it's got to be something that's imported.
Yes, sir.
Now, to make space for something to come in, you got to clear out something that's already there.
Right.
So like you say, you clear out the fact that grandma, granddaddy, mama, daddy took the kids to the polling place and say, here is what you look forward to that fact that one day you'll be able to vote. So to get the guns in, you had to take sensibility and wisdom and knowledge out. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you make sure you get out there and exercise your right to vote and look at it like this. Some service that you offer is going to benefit someone other than you further down the line. And that is your responsibility too. We are required to be of service to our family and our next door neighbors, but we're also required to be of service to that generation to come. And that is what is I love so much about you. I have to tell a secret. She and I attended.
What secret?
Yeah, I can't get around it. She directs the choir for the children, and it just.
You better say the youth too, because the teenagers don't want to be called children.
Okay, well, the youth and the children and
young
people, and one of the greatest joys that I have is all that other. Well, I'm not going to say that, but one of the greatest joys I have is being an usher. And when the children walk out of the choir stand and they're going to the altar to pray, they come down the door where I'm an usher. And that is just fulfilling to me, okay, to see those young people walk through there. What else is going on in the community? What's going on with you?
Well, if you don't mind me putting a little caveat about design and the voting, and that's why it's important for us to service the young people. And the reason being is because what's happening is they're getting caught up in gangs and so on and so forth. And then when they commit a felony, right, what do they take away from them? The right to vote. Right. The right to vote. And so it's imperative, especially as men, we need to be more involved in our communities, because it takes a man to teach a boy how to become a man.
Yeah.
And we've forsaken our responsibility as men, but we want the privilege of being a man, but we've forsaken our responsibility. And I believe that that's the problem. I believe everything else is a symptom. But men not taking their rightful place is the problem.
Yeah. Well, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that if we dig a little deeper, that we'll find. This thing has just stayed with me. The people that were committed to holding people down and benefiting by this. This is not something that. Okay, we're doing because we just don't like you. Some of them do it because they don't like you, but some of them are doing it because it's profitable.
Exactly.
Well, that's true. But I want to give a shout out to the Watts Gang Task Force. I'm not a member of the community in terms of living there, but the Watts Gang Task Force was started about 15 years ago when Janice Hahn was the councilwoman because the residents said there's too much gang activity, too many shootings and killings.
Right.
So a few people, Pastor Clark, Miss Lillian, and Betty Day, and a couple others, got with Janice Hahn. Every Monday for the last 15 years, we meet on Mondays from 10 to 12 in the councilman's office, who's now Joe Busciano. The councilman comes, the city attorney comes sometimes, Deputy Chief Beck comes sometimes, the community comes, and other organizations come. We meet. The sheriff gives a report about the crime during that week.
Right.
They talk about how, they can get rid of it. But some weeks, there's been no crime. Maybe a burglary. Yeah. The police give a report. And the gang interventionists are there. Those are people that maybe used to be in a gang and now they're in their 40s. And we work together, and therefore crime is down. Everybody expected Watts to explode with the 50th anniversary. That's why it didn't explode, because the communities have gotten together. The Imperial Courts, Nickerson Gardens, Jordan Downs, Gonzac. Everybody is there every Monday to discuss okay, this happened, what can we do about it?
Right.
And I will say that the police and the sheriffs in Watts behave differently than they do in other communities.
Right.
I'm not going to say everything's perfect, but because they have an ownness to the chief and their captain, and they're part of the community, it's just a whole different ballgame.
You know, I commend Watts and other communities that have gotten involved. That's what makes the difference.
Yes.
You know, we have to get involved on all aspects of the community. And I set up doing reading. There's a benefit sometimes with change, and sometimes change is not something that you open the door and welcome in. It just is there. And so I find myself doing a lot more research and everything else. Mrs. Walker is not with us now, but she was very good at research. And in doing the research, looking at grief and loss and looking at how accomplished you are, it just opened my eyes to how much work is being done to address this issue. Last week, our guest was Dr. Randolph and Chloe King.
Yes.
And they had this event where they wanted the murders to stop now. And I went, isn't this interesting? Their thing was they had 1,000 praying grandmothers, and it was about 5 different organizations that was big. And now here we are. Okay, how do we deal with it? So that's why we're here. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get back with Arvis, and we're going to let her talk to us about some of the things. In our ad break, we have a new person that's a coming supporter of the Raymond Hall Show, and I am so excited about that. Donzel's Enterprises provides residential care to special needs persons in residential settings, and they're coming aboard as a sponsor to the Raymond Hall Show, so we're excited about that. We're always excited about everyone that supports us. Bishop, thank you. Bishop Lonnie McNamee, we thank you. American Legion Post 109 is having their meeting. We're going to see if we can get a flyer up for him and for Arvis Jones up on the show. I've got to mention something that was unfortunate. It's not an ad, but it's something that we need to put on the plate. Some of you young people won't remember this, but I remember when the world exploded with the Olympics, with the Palestinians and that whole
Oh, yeah. I
thing.
remember that.
And we need you to start reading, because someone will put something on the internet and it may be tainted to their points of view.
Their agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, you know, at the Raymond Hall Show, I'm going to say what I want to say. Sponsor, no sponsor. I'm going to try to say it intelligently and respectfully, and I'm going to try and make sure that I'm speaking from a truthful position. But there is no justification to shoot at 2,500 people. There's no. And we have a hand in some of this.
Big hand.
That embassy was in Tel Aviv, and it's been there in Tel Aviv, and everybody has said, let the people work it out. And for one person who it just so happens that's their religious persuasion, say, no, we're going to move it to Jerusalem. And all of a sudden, a nation, even though they don't want to recognize Palestine as a nation, but a nation of people feel insulted.
Yeah.
And to address the issue, you take guns and start shooting at people. Think about it. Think about what you're doing. 4 years, 8 years, you know. It's not good that the next you be wanting to shoot at somebody else. Well, you're probably doing it already. Now we're going to move the point. Okay. You know what we say here? Cut it out. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on.
Take our break? No.
Yeah, we'll take a break. We're going to take a quick break. You see how they help me, Raymond? Leave that subject alone. Okay.
I don't say leave. It's just that, the man is trying to do we're off, right?
No. This is the Raymond House Show. So
it seems like everything that he thinks had Obama's name on it. It's just whether it makes sense or not, cut it off.
Right.
Throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Right.
It doesn't seem like it has any, from his perspective, religious leaning.
Right.
It's about the money.
Right.
And what President Obama did that he thinks might have looked halfway good.
Right. Well, to complicate this matter, his son-in-law is who he put in charge of the thing, and his son-in-law, his daughter, somebody in there is a connection to that religion.
The son-in-law.
Son-in-law. Okay, so now, no. Okay, and it's an interesting thing about the pea. If you drop that little stone, that pea, in a little glass of water, you can see the ripples. If you drop it in the ocean, you don't see a difference. But if you drop enough in the ocean, you'll see a difference. It's just my opinion that just having a correct posture is a part of service too.
Okay.
If our children see that we move with water, just however the water moves, that's what we move. Well, what do we expect our children to do or be? We cannot talk about the killings and everything here if we are going to allow or be a part or cause some of this other stuff. Mm-hmm. It's got to be a way to work it out. It's an interesting thing because in my mother's favorite book, Ecclesiastes, where there's a time to and a time
time for everything.
It says that when it speaks of war, it says there's a time of war. In the King James, and when it talks about other things, it says it's a time to live, a time to die, a time to cry, a time to laugh. But when it gets to war, it says a time of war. You can make a decision about war. And war harms so many people for so many generations. It just doesn't stop with the people who were wounded or affected or lost their lives. This thing goes over into generations. So we're going to have conversations here that are tough for other people, but that's who we are. This is the Raymond House Show where we have a different conversation. Any other covering points or points of interest?
No, I'm not going to bring up anything else. We're going to get back on topic.
Okay. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we are going to be with Arvis Jones, and we're going to be talking about grief and loss. Stay with us. Thank you. Thank you so very much, and we're back here with Arvis Jones and Mr. Derek Williams, and today's subject is on grief and loss, and we are so happy to have you. I think we have her bio there, don't we?
Yes, we do, and I'm just excited to share this about Arvis. Arvis Jones received a BA degree from California State Long Beach with a music therapy certificate and a Master of Arts degree in clinical psychology from National University. She was the first African-American music therapist employed by Arts and Services for the Disabled. Arvis also was the first music therapist at the Los Angeles Child Guidance Clinic, where she worked with children and youth of all ages with emotional and environmental problems. While there, she developed a program to address the needs of children and youth ages 2.5 to 22.
Wow.
Arvis has practiced music therapy with children and youth with dual diagnoses, seniors, stroke clients, Alzheimer's patients, and other diagnoses. Wow. You know, after her son, Damon Sr., was killed in a mistaken identity shooting at the age of 38, Arvis was asked by the city attorney's office to develop a grief and loss program that was used in 9 middle schools at LAUSD, and is currently working on a book about her music therapy experiences. So at this time, Arvis, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can truly share what you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You. So I'm supposed to tell a little bit about what I do?
Mm-hmm. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I want to get Mr. Williams in here, too, because Mr. Williams offers a therapy that ranges over a number of topics through various communities. So now, briefly give us introduction to the therapy that you offer in line with the grief and loss. How does your therapy work?
Yeah, the therapy that I utilize is called hypnotherapy, and I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I also have a master's degree in theological studies, and I was also a youth pastor. So one of the things that I like to say, like, no matter how old you get, there's a part of us that's still a child, and so the whole idea is to connect with that child, because it's usually like a hurt child, an abused child, a misused child, and that's when all the defense mechanisms and coping mechanisms are actually developed. And it's like a computer. If you never get an upgrade, then, you know, I'll use myself, about to turn 50. If I never consciously do an upgrade, then I'll be operating on a child's coping mechanism. And so as we're dealing with grief, so children learn how to deal with grief at a very young age.
Now, that was one of the things that we said that we were going to talk about. We have 3 things that we definitely wanted to talk about, and one of the first things you said is we don't get help.
No. As a community of people, we don't get help. And I can't tell you how many times I was going to work with someone's child because they were traumatized by a death. And the parent would say, "That's okay, Miss Arvis, I have my church family." And I explained to them what to look for, and about 3 or 4 weeks later, they come back and say, "Miss Arvis, can we see you?" And so I've been getting with many ministers like Reverend Sauls at Holman United Methodist, Reverend Rump at Grant, and other churches where I'm doing workshops to let the church congregation know that getting help in grief and loss doesn't take away from your spirituality. There's no conflict. In fact, when I train my grief therapists, I tell them, if someone has a faith, doesn't matter what it is, you use that because they start here in their grief journey instead of here. So that's been one of the latest things I've been doing with churches.
Okay.
One of the things that I used to stomp the pavement, letting people know how unresolved grief and loss affects our children. Because at one time I worked with children and then just with their families. I've since branched out. And so this program that I wrote for LA Unified, after they finally listened to me, was a program where we simply were teaching these youth what to do with their feelings.
Okay.
Strategies to use for their feelings. Playing ball, finding somebody to talk to, listening to music. We also would delve into, because in our communities, drug usage, gangs, how they started, what's the pros and cons of gangs, because there are some. Just things to make them think. Because I would tell them, this is not the last death you're going to experience at this age.
Right.
And a lot of times we never know what you're going to get when you work with these children, but I found that they really took to it because they would bring other kids into the group and say, "Miss Arvis, you need to talk to him." And one of the things that I really did with my groups, it was like making a community of ambassadors.
Oh, okay.
I would make these children so that they knew how to reach out to others. And it seemed like, well, the statistics we did showed that every person that took my group, their grades went up, their negative behaviors went down, their depression levels went down.
Okay.
And now some of these kids are in their early 20s. I'm running into them, and they're really doing great. Or I've had them call me later and say, "Mr. Arvis, I need to talk." But the whole thing was feelings. What do you do with your feelings? I used to say, if God didn't give boys tears, they wouldn't cry.
Right.
And I remember one time, because, you get a group of teenagers, and they're like,
I ain't crying.
and I would say, I'm crying. And I would say, wouldn't it be terrible for somebody to die and nobody cried? What kind of person was that?
Yeah.
Boy, I'm a genius. The first time I did that, the tears were coming down, and then we had them. We had one rule in this group. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in here stays in here. Over a 2-year period of time, in 9 middle schools, not one child broached or breached that confidentiality because they were sharing themselves.
Right. Now, is there a different kind of grief for a sudden loss as opposed to someone just naturally passing, like a grandparent or a parent just age and pass? Did you find it?
There is complicated grief and there's uncomplicated grief. Complicated grief, I'll say uncomplicated grief is when a child is not at risk, the family is a healthy family, grandma gets sick and dies.
Okay.
A lot of times when we were doing groups with those children outside of the school groups, because I was doing family groups, they might only take 2 or 3 months needed to get them through the grief process because they came from a healthy environment. Complicated grief is when a youth is traumatized over and over again, hearing the helicopters, somebody in school gets shot, a cousin gets shot, and then it happens to them. Or I've done things with immigration. Grandma's here, and then grandma's gone suddenly. And then when you tell even a child, smaller child, oh, grandma went away. and then mommy goes to the store and goes away. They just fall out because they don't understand the difference. So, there's a difference in the type of grief and whether trauma is associated with it or not.
Okay. Well, I have a question. How do you use the music? Because you say, you use music therapy. How does that work?
Well, when I first started doing grief and loss, I didn't really use music. But now I've incorporated, for instance, I have a keyboard that's about this size. It has a recording button on it. I will let a child play it. And it's not playing. It's just anything you want to do, recording it. And then we'll say, this is Mommy's song, or whoever the loss was, would you play a song for them? And then I press the recording button, play it back, and they can hear that song. Nice. We do a lot of things with percussion instruments, maracas, claves, drums. Drums can be used to play your feelings, your emotions, because I find feelings and emotions are what we react on. Something up here can say one thing, but this and how you feel says something else. And so once we can break through that hardness, like, I'm okay, I'm all right, even with adults, once you break through that, then you can start I call it your grief walk. I say, I can't take your pain away. I can only help you with your grief walk.
Right, right.
And
so what happens when it appears some people never get over the grief or the loss?
A lot of times I'm finding, because I get people coming 10 years after their spouse has died, it's because they never made that grief journey. Yeah. A woman, I work with a lot of mothers, murder victims that you see on the news, because the police call me out to the crime scenes a lot of times.
Wow.
Well, since I've retired, I go out for certain officers, but they call me out there, and I don't go out to give therapy. I go out to support. When I'm there to support, and the marriage crisis response team, who I used to train, they're there. It can be a car accident. They're there. But when everything's over that day, they're gone. I'm there for afterwards to set them up for therapy. And when they get to know me, they're no longer afraid of therapy, even though I'm not doing therapy. They see me as a therapist, and it helps a lot. But there are so many mothers that I work with. I've worked with mothers that I worked with one mother in January 08. She lost a son to gun violence. And then in March of 08, she lost another son who was not involved with any kind of violence. And I have a lot of mothers like that. And so because of that, I'm now doing adult groups, and we can talk about that later, adult support groups. Right. But the main thing I want to say is I was a therapist working with these families. I thought I'd lost a baby at 4 months old. My mother and father were gone. My grandparents were gone. So I knew about grief. But when my own son got killed, it opened up a different feeling and mindset for me. And I went through, I knew mentally what was going on with me. But being there was like on the outside looking in of what these mothers go through. And I became a workaholic for a while after that, till I finally had to face the fact that I had to feel my own grief.
Wow. I think that a lot of us are walking around with grief and loss.
Absolutely.
Has not been dealt with.
And anger is the main thing that comes out. There's been some mothers in the past 2 or 3 weeks that their children, you've seen on the news, have been killed one way or the other. And anger is an overarching branch that we work on.
Now, so how we talked about or you shared with me, understanding how unresolved grief and loss affect children, youth, and teens.
Well,
how is it different from the how it affects adults?
Well, one of the ways, our children are so in, a lot of children in our communities are in jeopardy of growing up.
That's true.
And so unresolved grief and loss can lead to gang involvement. It can lead to early pregnancy, drug use. And so I would see myself there kind of like as, what can I say, a peer person for them. I had a young man one time whose family business was the gang and selling drugs. This young man was in middle school. He wasn't in my groups, but I was working with him, and he wanted to be a doctor. His mother had died. He was living with his grandmother. And you have to understand what the streets are all about, and you also have to respect the streets because there's a hierarchy. So I went to what we call a gang interventionist, a person that's a go-between between the community police and the gangs, because they used to be in a gang. I went to the gang interventionist for that community and said, this child wants to da-da-da. Who's in charge? Took me to the relative that was in charge, and I said, would you leave this young man alone? He wants to become a doctor. He needs to study. He can't join your gang. Do you know? They said, okay, Miss Lady. And then it was like, did you do your homework tonight, boy? You know, it's,
okay.
You can't.
They all in.
You can't be out here and do this work. You have to become a part of the community, and you have to respect the community. Because when I work with juvenile delinquents, because I used to do that, who have maybe killed someone, they tell me they can't sleep at night because they always see the face of the person. So if you think people get away because the police didn't catch them, it's a different story.
Well, that's I've heard that so many times from fellow veterans that I think that's it's interesting that as you talk, I'm thinking about some of the things that they have tried to treat veterans with PTSD.
Yeah, I was a Marine wife for Vietnam. I know
so
what
you
they
know
go
what time
through.
it is.
Yeah. But our children are all God's children, no matter what they're doing, because I've found when you're dealing with gangbangers, when you show them like and respect, they treat you the same way.
They give it back.
Give it back.
Absolutely.
So
Why the Department of Veteran Affairs look at some of your model and see if, because they're reaching out now to innovative ways to address this issue?
I work with one person with that department, but I guess I hadn't done as much. Well, you know what? I had my head down trying to do what I could do for the kids because it was a younger person that killed my son, actually. And he wasn't supposed to be killing the person he thought my son was. But I had to recognize there's only so much you can do. I have stopped. I have gotten out of bed at 11 o'clock at night to go to a crime scene or go to a young person's home because somebody died. And it takes a village. I need a village. I'm kind of looking for one now that I've... It took a minute to kind of settle down, too, from my son's death. You know, my youngest granddaughter was born 6 days after he got killed.
Wow.
You know, and sometimes she'll say, it's not fair, I don't have my daddy. You know, and so I had to take care of my family, too. I'm open to reaching out to anybody. I work very closely with Janice Hahn's supervisor, Mark Willie Thomas, has pushed me a lot. Assemblyman Mike Gibson. I've worked, work with a lot of them, but I'm open.
Yeah. Well, I can say this. Your service would be welcomed. I don't know about the department, but I know your service would be welcomed from veterans because that's one of the issues that sometimes people in situations just don't go away. But you get 50s. Well, all of my adult life this is not the time or the place for it, but a certain situation just will not go away.
The Center for Grief and Loss for Children that I really started with, we had some kind of contract, and we used to work with the families of the children of veterans who had been killed. But I hadn't written the youth program at that time, so I'm ready to reach out. This is me in retirement. I'm ready to reach out to anybody that wants to help, like my brother Daryl here. Yeah.
I'd like to hear what.
Well, I know you do reach out to veterans because you are a vet.
Yeah.
Yes.
You reach out to veterans. And
the one thing that she mentioned earlier, I think is vitally important, is about support. Because there is what's called a cycle of loss or a cycle of grief. And people can get stuck in there. So when you're talking about adults who never really dealt with that, but oftentimes in our community, we feel like it's a black mark on us, no pun intended, to go see a therapist.
You must be crazy.
Like there ain't nothing wrong with you, But going through the grief cycle, if you don't complete it, and then you get another one and another one, then you begin to live a habit of going through the cycle. You never get to the end, and it's kind of like the way I like to put it. Like, let's say if I broke my arm, and then once my arm was broken, I didn't go to the doctor. So time's going to help that arm to heal, but if it doesn't heal properly, I'll have some use, but there'll be a lot of dysfunction with that use. I won't be able to utilize it to the capability that is available. Right. And so many of us, we've gone through grief, but we haven't completed the cycle, and we healed improperly. Yeah. And so
one of the things that I heard often, and it was amazing because I heard it in a different way from Vietnam era veterans than you do from Afghanistan and the Persian Gulf, but it's still the same message.
Well, it's a different kind of war.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's the thing is, we've learned how to take that door and shut it. But every now and then, someone or some situation comes along and that door comes open. And especially what I'm so amazed and so just in awe of you about, you're able to take those doors and deal with them, where other people inside of the VA system, inside the VA, not all of them, but a lot of them, they're good at, okay, let's talk about it, but they don't know how to close that door. Now a veteran is left with that same experience, very real. Everybody else go home and they happy. Right. But you just have that experience, open door right back with you.
Well, it's like Derek said, or Mr. Williams, you have to be in your purpose. I finally, I eventually realized this was my purpose. And I also train grief therapists. Now, they're wonderful therapists all around the country. But grief is a different situation. Yes. Regular therapy, they say don't say anything about yourself. You keep it like this. But grief and loss, you have to pull that person in closely. Right. And so I share with them what happened to my son. And touch is important. Now, there's improper touch. Now, I'm an old lady, so, I'm a grandmother. Yeah. But touching is important. I tell my therapist, if they'll let you, touch their arm. Because one of the things that happens when death happens to you, and it happens suddenly, you feel there's nobody but you. A couple of mothers that have recently experienced loss. This last Saturday, I went to the 11th anniversary of a mother's luncheon that's given every year by Kathy Wooten. For mothers who have lost their children, whatever age. Right. And when I get these mothers there and they felt like it only happened to them, nobody understands what I'm going through, and then they get into this room of 200 other mothers.
Share similar
experience. It just opens them up. So I think grief therapy is different than other therapy, and grief therapy is also faster.
Okay. Yeah.
Because when you're just dealing with behaviors, you got to wait for the brain to kick in. And when you're dealing with grief, and I've also found with children that they say ADHD, when you don't deal with the behaviors but deal with the grief, the behaviors lessen or sometimes go away. Okay. Because it's like cleaning out. Like I say, it's like a greasy table. What happens when you wipe a greasy table?
Spread the grease.
It spreads the grease. But you eventually get to it. Yeah, right. And so you tend to get to the healing aspect of grief faster than you do the other clinical problems because you know what the cause is.
Now, is there any field of study where grief and loss is a part of that curriculum or course of study?
There's a national child stress network.
Okay.
That they were put together, I believe, after 9/11 because they didn't think children grieved. NCSTN, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
You can click online. They have all kinds of remedies for grief, all kinds of things. They have books. We have a children's grief conference every March downtown, and we get all these clinicians and people that are interested in childhood grief. Get people from all over the country. There's another conference, Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma, we have conferences in San Diego every year, and it deals with all kinds of traumas.
Now, speaking of events, do you have a web page or a contact number you want to?
Yes, I do free counseling, and I sent you maybe later you can put it up another day. I do free counseling for adults, grief support groups.
Okay.
Westmount Counseling Center every Tuesday night at 6:30. The address is 1704 Manchester Boulevard, Suite 202. It's free. If you have victims of crime, we will tap into that source. But for anybody else, if you don't have anything, fine. If you do donations, every Tuesday night's a free adult counseling group.
Okay. Well, we have a call on the line, I think. And so we have to put our headphones on so we hear what the caller says. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the line. This is the Raymond Hall Show. Hello.
Hi, thank you. I first like to say I'm sorry for your loss, and I just wanted to check in again about the work that we did on the 12th of this month. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I'm so thankful that someone is giving us a platform. And the things, we were able to get together. We had law enforcement. We had people speaking from everywhere. 1,000 praying grandmothers, mothers in charge, people who have lost everything, their only sons, their only daughters. But the main thing that we are trying to do is to save lives and talk about what we could do differently for the work that we're doing. And again, thank you. I really appreciate for having this platform. We want to get a independent.
Hello?
Carla, we're losing you.
Hello?
Okay.
I was invited to that, but I'd had foot surgery and couldn't make it.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, so what we really need is to have a private company to investigate. Let's say we have something right now for the police department. Let's say a police department, if they shoot and kill someone, guess who comes in to investigate it?
The police.
A police department.
Mm-hmm.
So what good is that doing us? We need to get a referendum so that we can have an independent prosecutor's office. They have nothing to do with the police department, and then we can make some changes. So what that means is we need to get some signatures so that we can get something on the ballot.
Okay.
If we were to get 700,000 signatures and a few people to talk about it, celebrities, we could get it on the ballot and have a vote. But right now, just think about it. If something happens with the police department and we bring in police department to investigate it, what do you think is going to happen?
Have you talked to anyone like Mark Ridley Thomas or Assemblyman Gibson?
We're just now getting started. Our very first program was on the 12th of this month. So this is what I'm working towards. Dr. Sherry Randolph and I, Cleo King, we are willing to do the work in our community. And this, because we're just tired of sitting at home being upset. Now that we're willing to work toward this, we're also willing to work toward doing jury duty. We only make up 12% of the population, but more than 50% of the prisons. Why do you think that is?
Well,
we're not doing our jury duty. So these are the things that we can get into action about.
yes.
Jury duty comes from voting too.
Yeah, it
Yes.
does.
That's where the list comes from.
Well, we commend you for the work that you all are doing, and when I took your flyer to the church, by the way, Kirkland Academy is so excited about working with you, or you working with them. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, so I just thought it was a perfect fit that you all had the show last week that talked about to stop the murders now, and it is so complex because those murders are coming from some of everywhere.
Yes.
That we needed to address that. And here, Arvis and Derek are talking about, consequences and having to deal with it, how it impacts those that are left, the children, and all those kind of things. And I see it differently now when I see the children on TV.
Actually, I wondered why they gave me middle school when I wrote the program, but it was a gang prevention program. That's what it was considered as, and most of those kids did not go into gangs because they didn't have the reasons that kids do go into gangs facing them.
Right. So thank you, Cleo, so very much.
I'm glad that we could do this work, and it's about saving lives.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. And I will give you kudos because your millennials did respond to the fact that we had such a superstar in the studio. So,
thank you.
Yes.
And I will be in touch. I look forward to working with your group, and hopefully we can get me in there soon to meet everybody and talk to the children.
Okay. Thank you so much for calling.
You.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Cleo King and Dr. Randolph. They was here with us last week. We're here with Derek Williams and Arvis Jones, and we're talking about grief and loss today.
And healing.
And healing.
Can I ask a question? Sure. You know, I've had my share of grief and loss from a child. You know, my father, my brother, my mother, everybody sort of close to me. So when do you know you're healed?
That's a good question.
Yes. How do I know that I'm okay?
Mm-hmm. I would say, like, there's different levels of okay, right? So, do we completely heal? I don't know if you ever completely heal. But the thing that I always say is the end game is forgiveness, right? Mm-hmm. So when you go through that complete process and you're able to forgive yourself, you're able to forgive, like, because sometimes when someone dies, like, we feel abandoned.
Yeah.
Like
I know I did as a child.
Yeah. Why'd you leave me?
Deserved guilt.
Yeah. So. Because
I saw my father die at home.
Yes.
As a child.
Right.
I will tell you, if he's finished that, people think that healing is never missing that person, never crying for them. I still miss my son.
Oh, okay.
That's
yes.
healthy.
Yes.
And I cry for him, but I'm not in bed crying. I understand what I'm doing, and I go, okay, I'm glad you were here, and I get up and walk on. You never stop missing certain people, especially when it's your child. Or maybe your mother, too. Or maybe your daddy, too. Anyway.
Right. It's a part of you.
The healing doesn't mean you forget them and you don't think of them. That's the unhealing.
Right.
The healing means I think of them and I smile.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, Canada.
That's right. Well, I am just amazed how fast an hour goes.
Yes, it is.
It's been an hour already.
Yeah.
Seemed like somebody needed a 2-hour show.
Hint.
I mean, Steve Harvey don't do 4 hours. I'm just saying.
You all heard that. So next week we will have our address to send our sponsor. All of you all that want to be sponsors and supporters, you can do that by tuning in to the webpage, the Raymond Hall Show webpage, and it'll give you some further directions. We're going to post all of the contact information that you can find.
Call me. Anybody, call me anytime. Come to our groups and maybe some of the workshops that I do. It's all necessary. I'm
Okay.
going to be doing a workshop in June at Holman United Methodist Church.
Okay, and the address, you can all go online, but the address one more time that she holds every
Groups.
week.
Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday is at 1704 Manchester Boulevard, Suite 202A. That's Los Angeles 90047. And you can reach her at 424?
No, try 213-924-3510. 213-924-3510. And there's another number that when you go online, you'll see on the website at the Counseling Center where you can also reach me.
Okay. And Derek, how can people reach out to you?
I can be reached at 562-209-2804 or focus2hypnosis@gmail.com. And it's focus, the number 2, hypnosis@gmail.com.
Okay. Well,
Call me.
I'm sure they love us, but we got to get out of here. Okay.
It's been fun.
It's been fun. I want to thank you, Miss Theus.
Yes, don't forget to vote.
Miss
June the 5th.
Miss LaVeda.
Vote 18. We are
Where's my t-shirt? Where's my
3653.
t-shirt at?
I'll have to bring you one.
I definitely want a t-shirt.
We must participate.
That's right.
The caller that called in, you get on jury duty, as she said, that's taken off the voting rolls.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
it is. There's my contact information.
There we go.
Yes.
There we are. Okay, so it's AAVREP is looking for community activists like you.
And you can get paid $12 an hour if you come out and help register to vote. So
Sign me up.
just make that call. $12 an hour.
She hold on a lot of cash over there.
I know when
Yes.
we'll be doing the Raymond Hall show next week. I'll be at that $12 an hour. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for joining us here at the Raymond Hall Show. Remember, service is what built this nation. The African American community is a unique community when it comes to service. Everybody contributes to the nation, the Native American, the women's suffrage, the Asian Pacific Islanders. Everybody has contributed to the nation that we know it is today. But the African American has a unique contribution. It's like a unique fabric in a cloth. Our solutions came through service. It didn't come through people leaving just everything that they had or they had stored up. It said, I'm going to leave you what I have, and part of what I have is the legacy of my service. Have a legacy of service to leave to those that come behind you. Yes, it's more than just opening doors. Yes, it's more than being mindful to say yes, ma'am, and no, sir. Do those things also. But inside of you is a talent that is given to you, a talent that's assigned to you in the time that's assigned to you. And that talent and that time assigned to you is for someone else. You're to use it, and it is to be the betterment for a coming community. We love you here. We want to thank Arvis Jones. We want to thank my brother Derek.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We want to thank Miss LaVeda.
One of these days he's going to get it.
I don't know why I keep wanting
It's
to say
LaVeda.
She keep told me Granada. Take your vacation in Granada. Okay.
That's
Thank you,
okay.
Ruby.
I love you too, and
I love you
that's
too.
okay.
Okay, so we want to make sure that you join us again. In the coming weeks, we're going to have an author, a young author, somewhere around 20, 21 years old. We are going to be talking to someone that is going to put faces on this thing of homelessness. How 100 seniors got put out of a building and rehabbed the building, and then they could not afford to get back into it. So we're going to put some faces on that. Last 15 seconds. Anything to say in 15 seconds?
Don't forget, don't get angry at your friends and your loved ones when they say something kind of stupid to you. They don't know what to say. Many times people just want to say that they care and they say something stupid. Don't get angry with them. Just love them.
Okay. Mr. Eric?
Steve Harvey said this morning, he said not to ask someone who's never been where you're going for directions. So that being said, if you are going through grief, go to someone who has training on how to help you get through grief. It's okay.
Yes. Get out and vote. That's my whole purpose. Vote.
Okay. Well, that's the end of this show. We want to thank you for viewing, and we will look forward to seeing you here again this time next week. And thank you for tuning in to the Raymond Hall Show. God bless you, and have a good evening.
Peace.
So that's not...